Hey guys, I wanted to make a video about what makes God God. What makes God the true God, the God of the Bible, the true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and what makes him different from the rest of the world. Also, what makes Jesus Christ God? What proves that Jesus Christ is God? And what can we look at in the Bible without seeing a miracle in our personal lives, without seeing a sign that shows us that Jesus Christ is God? We see this in the Bible, and I think it's in Colossians in the second chapter or third. I don't remember. Maybe it's even in the first. I think it's in Colossians where it says, Jesus Christ is the image of the invisible God. And I think most of us who believe in Jesus Christ already know that. But I want to also appeal to people who maybe don't believe in Jesus Christ and give you, an example, but also the nature of God, which helps prove to me and to others that Jesus Christ is God, and also proves that God, the God of the Bible, is who he says he is, that he is the only one God. And I wanted to make something where you could look at the difference between him and the rest of the world and these other pagan little gods and see see what makes him better, what makes him truly God. And I think when you actually see it in this way, then you can stop it and not have to see a miracle, not have to see Jesus Christ in the flesh. You can, hear and believe. And this is a topic that Jesus Christ, when he was on earth, was talking about a lot, because many people came to him wanting to see miracles. They wanted to see little signs and wonders. Herod wanted to see him. The Pharisees wanted to see him. Other people wanted to see Jesus do all these things to help prove that he was God. But, and Jesus wouldn't do them for those, he wouldn't do it. And I always wondered why for a while, but it was like the Lord started revealing to me is that's not what makes him God. This isn't what makes him, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the God of gods. This isn't what makes him, puts him on the throne. And a lot of you might be scratching your head saying, well, if you could do all these miracles, that would make you God. Yes, that is an attribute of him. He can do these things, which is amazing. But I would, stand firm on that what really is more amazing is why I have Genesis 2:17 pulled up here, is that he could eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and never do evil. See, when man eats the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, he dies. Because we sin, because we know evil and good, and then we willingly sin. We willingly choose to do evil. And we do this from the time we're born to the time we die. A lot of people will say that they've quit sinning, but they just don't understand what sin is. And that's a totally different video and a totally different topic. You can go watch some of my other videos if you want to hear about sinless perfectionism and all that nonsense. But the point is only God can do that. Only God can eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and not die. So when Satan came to Adam and Eve, he said that you will be like God if you eat this. But he also lied and said that you will not die. You will surely not die. Which he lied and went against God's word. But he told a partial truth, saying that you will be like God. And I believe this is what makes God God, is the fact that he can know both things and never even in his heart contemplate or want to do evil at all. He knows good and evil, and he'll never choose to do evil. That's the difference between God and man, God and all these other so-called little gods, and all the angels. See, even the angels sinned. Even the angels made mistakes. Even they were tempted. The angels, it says the sons of God were tempted by women, and Satan was tempted and fell into pride. So we see that not even the angels themselves could do this. This goes against, and is a good argument for Jehovah's Witnesses, that Michael the Archangel Jesus could not be Michael the Archangel, because an angel could not come down and live through all that temptation and not sin. Only God could. This is a great proof to me that this is why Jesus is God, because only God could do that. See, basically the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is like the law. It's basically the same thing, saying you'll know good and evil and you'll always choose to do good. You'll live by your own righteousness, and if you succeed, then you can go to heaven. But the tree of life is living by grace. It's accepting that I can't do these things. The only way I can ever even become remotely even close or anything like God is by letting his Spirit come into me and transform me from the inside. I'm a firm believer that if you eat the spirit, the tree of life, the Spirit of grace, then you'll be more like God than you could ever be from eating the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because no man can do that. No man can not, no person, every other creature besides God could eat the tree of good, the knowledge of good and evil, and then always choose to do good. and never choose to do evil. Only God could do that. And I made that abundantly clear. But the point is I believe that this is the good example, and it's a foreshadowing of what's to come about the world always choosing, because every other religion other than Christianity is telling you you have to do good and not do evil, do good, not do evil, and then you'll go to heaven. Which Christianity is saying, no, trust in God, have faith in Him, and then let Him come and be your righteousness, and then you'll go to heaven. Believe in Him, and He will save you. This is the difference, and this is, I think, what happened at the beginning is trust in the Lord, in His Word, or go know what good and evil is and try to do it yourself. And it's the same battle that's been going on for thousands of years now. All right. So also, I wanted to help, throw this point home, to help knock this point home, I wanted to go on to the names of God. And I hope I did a good job here. I've been trying to do this video a few times now, and it's kind of deep, the point I want to make, and it's hard to do, so please bear with me. I hope this comes out right. Okay, so this is the names of God right here. And just to try to knock home the difference between God, of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all of the pagan, ancient little gods, and every other person under the sun, I want to knock home the nature of our God. And what this also is truly what makes Him God, because the miracles are amazing. Yes, it's amazing to raise from the dead. Yes, it is amazing to make, wine out of water. But those things in themselves, aren't what make God God. It's one of those sayings that's like, if you give, or it's not a saying, it's a verse, the point I want to make is, if you give man enough time and enough science and technology, he could do a lot of these little miracles. Over enough time, and a smart enough person could probably turn water into wine. But that doesn't make him God. A strong enough person like Samson could appear to be a god on the outside. Whoa, he can lift things that no other man can. You can have all these different supernatural events or supernatural people or supernatural things, but that doesn't make them God. What makes God God, what makes a person or God Himself is, because there's only one. I keep saying what makes a person God, but no one can become God. But what makes Him the only one is that no matter what He is abundantly selfless. And I'm sorry I butchered that point, but I just want to make it clear that the miracles are great, and that's an attribute of God. He does have that power. But that's not in itself what makes Him God. It's the nature of Him that He is love. That's basically simplified what I was trying to say. All right, so I want to move on to the names of God and prove that to you. So these are the Old Testament names right here. And this is El Shaddai, which is the Lord Almighty, which is true. And some of these are just, establishing that He is the only one, that He is the mighty one. And that is part of His godhood, an attribute of Him. But truly what makes Him God is the kindness and the nature of Him, the love of Him. So we keep going. I want to go down to Jehovah Nissa, which is Nissa, however you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I butchered that. The Lord my banner. And then Jehovah Ra, the Lord my shepherd. Jehovah Rapha, the Lord that heals. Jehovah Shammah, I think that's how you pronounce that. The Lord is there. There's another one that says the Lord is here, the Lord is with me. I forget which one that is. I think it might be over in this picture right here. The Lord that sees, El Ro, the God who sees me, the God who cares for me is basically what that's saying, the God who looks over me. Jehovah, I don't know how to pronounce that word. The Lord our righteousness. Jehovah, I don't know how to pronounce that word. The Lord who sanctifies you. El Olam, the everlasting God. You have Jehovah Shalom, which is the Lord of peace. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. The Lord of hosts. You see the names. There's so many names out that it becomes apparent that the nature of God is love. It is to provide. It is mercy. It is caring for others. This is what makes God God. It isn't the miracles. It isn't the power. Now, the power it is a part of God, and it is part of what makes Him God in a way, but it's just an attribute. The nature of God is what really He wants you to see, and this is why Jesus so many times didn't do miracles for people, because that didn't matter. He doesn't want to go do an act of work. It's just like if you had two kings, One of them loved his people, one of them hated his people. Now, but the one that hated his people was slightly physically stronger than the one who loved his people. So he wants to deceive you. He wants to not talk about who actually wants to take care of the people. He wants to go make being king about how strong you are physically. So he goes and he challenges the other king to a fight or a wrestling match or a fist fight. And he deceives the people by taking the focus off of what makes a king and puts it on outward appearances of strength. That's kind of what the world has been doing for a long time, and what's really what Satan's doing to people in the world, to try to take them off of Christ and put them on anything but him. It's just like Samson. Samson, and a lot of people don't understand the story of Samson. Why would God give this guy so much superhuman strength? But I think the reason he did this was to be an example to the rest of us. To show that you can have, because a lot of people think like Hercules and Samson, these are ideas of God. This is what a God is like. But we see when somebody has strength, that doesn't make them God. He still dies a pretty terrible death, and he makes all kinds of mistakes before he dies. And this, what we think is a blessing to him, which is a blessing from God, but he ends up using and abusing himself with it. Because this isn't what makes somebody truly strong. It's a nice gift to have, I'm sure. It'd help your life, make things easier, especially doing chores and stuff, or work, I mean. But at the same time, it also became a curse to him because he didn't have the ability to never choose to do evil. All right. I wanted to go into 10 civilizations that sacrifice human children. And you're wondering why I bring this up. Well, this also shows the nature of God and how God is different than the world, and how throughout the world you have what seems right to a man, but it be the exact opposite of what God said. So I went down through all of the different people, because the world in the olden days, and a lot of people, they say, well, we don't do this today, but we have a lot of abortion going on. So you could still say that's child sacrifice. So I went down and started looking at every civilization. So here's Babylon, which is in the Middle East. Aztec, which is in South America. Or Central America. Aztec was in Mexico? Yeah, Mexico City. I'm sorry, I was thinking Inca. Yeah, it's Mexico City. All right, Cana, which was right outside of Israel. And this is them sacrificing their children to Baal. And then even had the Israelites, where the Israelites did sacrifice their children to Baal. And I'll get to that in just a second. I've got a verse on that. The Olmec, the Maya, the Toltec, here's the Inca. So basically everywhere on earth, and then the Celtics, the Celts or whatever, they sacrifice children. It's the same reverse idea, or the reverse theology of God. It's like reverse theology. It's like whatever God says is good, they do the exact opposite. God wants to send his son into the world, send himself into the world for us, but the evil one says, no, give your children for God, but God gave his child for us. The evil one says, do harm to yourself, sacrifice yourself for God, but God says, no, I'll come down in the form of my son, in the form of the son, and sacrifice myself for you. You see the reverseness of everything. You see how Satan perverts and literally turns everything topsy-turvy backwards from the way it is. Just to show you the way of the world, you type in strength. True strength would be like what Jesus, the example of Jesus Christ. True strength would be when somebody slaps you on the cheek, turn the other. Just like true strength would be when Jesus was on the cross, being beaten when he was being beaten before, being spit upon, having all the power in the world, being able to not even snap his finger, just being able to just speak. And those people would all wither away, and then not doing it. But not only that, but loving his enemy. Loving them so much that he would continue and die for them, even though they hated him. But when you type in, that's what true strength is. When you type in strength, you should get a picture of Jesus on the cross. But what you get is Superman. And I'm not trying to bash a lot of these photos, because it's just whatever. Some people want to... there probably are some good photos. And there probably are some Bible verses. But the point I want to make is, the worldly form of strength is what a lot of people worship and think is what makes God, or what makes a God. They would worship Superman as a God. They would consider him a God. But the truth of the matter is, that's not what determines what makes our God God. And what because think about it this way. The person that you admire, the person that you idolize, would you want them to be lord over you? What if you idolize Superman? Now, he's a fictional character, so you couldn't really understand his flaws. So let's go with real people. Who do you idolize? Let's say you idolize Michael Jackson. And I'm just using him. I'm not trying to bash Michael Jackson. But what if you put him as Lord of your life? What would spending eternity with Michael Jackson be like? Even if it wasn't a peaceful place, kind of. Would it be something that you would really want to do? What if it was, who else do you idolize? Maybe it's a football player. Would you want to spend eternity with Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Or, I don't know, maybe Joe Montana? What if it was, and I'm trying to think of other people, a politician? Would you want to spend eternity? And I don't want to get into that. I'll just leave it at that. The point is, you get the idea that you could say, well, these people are nice people, but if you were beating the crap out of them, and excuse my language, would they turn the other cheek? Now, our God would turn the other cheek. If you were doing something wrong, would they forgive you? Our God would, and that's the difference. And the same thing with love. Some of these aren't bad, some of these are fine, but you get love, you get people kissing, which is, it could be true love, but that's not really what love is. True, an example of love should be Christ washing the feet of the sinners. Should be hanging on the cross again. I mean, you could type in everything and get a picture of Jesus, but you understand how the ways of the world confuse the actual meaning of love, of strength, of everything. And then I just wanted to go into more about the pagan religions right here, because it's all basically man-centered and man-focused and man-ideated. When you start to look at the ways of Christ compared to the ways of these so-called pagan gods, you start to see these people have to eat like we do. They need you to make offerings to the gods of wine and food and stuff, because they would pour out on the idols. Now, the Lord demanded some offerings, or didn't demand, but wanted some offerings. But he also said that's not what he really desires. He desires you to do justice and mercy and take care of orphans and widows. But it's also just having a heart and loving people. These gods, though, need these for to actually sustain themselves. And then when you actually go and read the stories of these gods, they act just like humans. They act just like every other person. There's no difference in them. There's no truth in them. And anyone with eyes to see will see that these are just stories of people, almost human-like characters that might have a few. Maybe they're a little bit stronger, or maybe they're very beautiful, or maybe they knew something differently. And I believe that's what it goes back to. I believe all these so-called pagan gods were either the fallen angels or the offspring of the fallen angels. So they had sin in them, and they weren't really any different than me and you. They might have just been stronger. They might have been taller. They might have been giants. They might have had something different going on with them. They might have had some technology. I don't know. I mean, it said, Zeus threw lightning bolts. Maybe he had some sort of gun, and it's just been interpreted the wrong way throughout it could be something very simple, and now they're considered a god. So I just wanted to point out the different natures, because you can go through and look at all of that and see that there is a difference between the God of peace, the God who will provide, and Zeus. And which one would you want to worship? Which one would you want to spend eternity with? Because you'll have that choice. And when you start to look at the supernatural characteristics of these so-called gods compared to the internal loving characteristics of Jesus Christ, you start to see that what Jesus Christ is doing is far more impressive and far harder to do than what any of these people ever even claim to do. And that's just being honest. It's like saying it's much easier when you're stronger than somebody, if they hit you, to just beat them up. It's much easier when you're smarter than somebody and they make fun of you, to make them look like a fool. But when you don't do those things, when you love them instead and then give your life for them, that's what a God would do. I'm using that in a term of somebody who doesn't know who God is. A God wouldn't go and be petty. A God wouldn't go and show off. A God would be kind and merciful, and that would make somebody a God. I mean, a lot of people, they make the joke like, and I've heard this a lot when, in sports and other things, and they'll make the joke, well, he's a God. He did that. He did some amazing feat. But we don't say that when somebody does a feat of kindness, when somebody, you know, gives their car or their house to a homeless person. And those things are much harder in all honesty than running the fastest time in the world, because you can say, well, yeah, that's hard, but a lot of these people are just using their natural talent. And yeah, some of them have exercised and trained, but this is something that's anyone could do if they were born into those shoes. It's the internal that's the hard. And I hope this made sense. I need to go get a glass of water. My throat's getting really dry. But I hope this made sense. And I hope this helped you understand of how you can know Christ is God without actually seeing a miracle, without actually seeing Him yourself. And I hope you can see the deep secret that He's the only one who can, that's ever existed, that can know good and evil and never choose to do evil. And that's what makes somebody God. That's what makes somebody great. Now, when we start to look in the world, we need to look for people like that who have had the option to do both good or evil, and have chosen to do good. And that's who we need to honor. And we don't need to go honor people that, yeah, they might be a little stronger than you, but that's not what's truly honorable. And as we start to see and mold everything after the example of Jesus Christ, and conform to how He did things, we'll start to really reveal of what is valuable, what is, a miracle, what is real strength, and what is just, some natural talent or some, training or something that's not even valuable at all. All right, guys, that's about all I wanted to talk about. I hope this didn't take too long. God bless and take care.